The 49ers Week 13 matchup against the Browns proved to be exactly what they needed. Now, this game was far from perfect, and there were some moments in this game that were pretty ugly, but overall, the Niners proved that they're stacking important games and important moments and showing that this team can still be built for a deep playoff run. We're going to break that all down for you on this episode of Niners Digest. My name is Ethan Galbraith. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any Niners updates. We're going to give you everything we got, including reactions to this Sunday's matchup against the Browns. Niners 26, Cleveland Browns 8. On paper, it may not seem like an important matchup, being an NFC versus an AFC matchup, not huge in terms of playoff implications, and you actually will see that in the standings for this week. Of course, games are still going on at the time of this recording. The Seahawks, for example, are still playing. The Rams did drop a game against the Carolina Panthers. We'll talk more about that later. And the Niners are still sitting put at the 7th seed. They're the last team in at 9-4 now, but it's their second 3-game winning streak of the season, which is huge for momentum, and they're quite literally now stacking wins again. So the seeding may not be super important right now as an instant reaction to this game, but we talked about previously in my last video about how there were a lot of important check marks and boxes that the Niners had to hit in this game, despite the Browns being really a worse opponent. And more or less they hit them. We'll talk about what I thought was the most important element of this game, which was the offensive line and pass protection specifically. And if we look at Brock Purdy's statistics compared to his previous matchup against the Panthers, this is a lot better. Overall, it's an okay game. His QB rating at 83 is solid, 16 of 29 with a touchdown, no turnovers. That's a big element of his performance today. He played solid, and there's really no complaints. And he dealt with some pressure in the offensive line. Didn't play great at times, but here's the important part here. Brock Purdy only got sacked one time for a loss of 7. That is a major victory for this offensive line. And of course, Myles Garrett was the one who got the sack. He's now at 19 sacks this season, which is insane. He is otherworldly. But more overall, the Niners kept that pass rush in check. Purdy, of course, one of his strengths is his scrambling abilities. You saw that during this game, and I think that's also a reflection of him feeling more comfortable post-turf toe injury. He's probably not going to be 100% at any point for the rest of the season, but showing how he played today was a promising sign. Now, the second part of my conversation about the offensive line in my last video was how well were they going to be able to run the ball? And it wasn't that great, in all honesty. Christian McCaffrey, 20 carries for 53 yards. I said in the last video how it was important to try and get that 4 yards a carry threshold, and they got worse. They actually were a yard under, for McCaffrey specifically, a yard under their year average so far. He did get a touchdown from 1 yard out to start the game, which was nice. And of course, Brock Purdy ran for a touchdown himself. But the run game left a lot to be desired. Thankfully, that didn't end up being as big of a factor as I originally thought it was, because the weather was not as horrible as forecast thought it was going to be. There was no snow. The wind ended up being a big factor, but didn't cost the Niners that many points. It didn't cost them any points, really. So there were some promise there. I think another part of this, though, is the receiving room. George Kittle was the number 1 receiver again, and he has now been the leading receiver for the Niners in multiple games this season, which I think is such a huge such a promising part of not just the offense, but the team as a whole, because of course George Kittle missed multiple games earlier this year with a hamstring injury. He's back, and having these consistent games, stacking games like this is such a good look for not only Kittle's future potential performances, but how this offense is rolling as a whole, especially when they're still struggling to get more out of the run game. But you look at the stats and you look at the final score, and you know that yes, the offense clearly played well. They put up 26 points, but the Browns only scored 8 points. And I said in my last video, looking ahead to this game, that the Browns offense, of course, is going to be flawed. Shedeur Sanders is making just his second career start. Their run game isn't great either. And just overall, their offense is kind of just not that good. And the 49ers made them pay. Look, Shedeur Sanders, for example, though, actually did not play bad. He went 16 of 25 for a buck 49 with 1 touchdown. Actually had a higher QB rating than Brock Purdy. But the sack stat is the most important one here. He was sacked 3 times. Now, Shedeur, if you watch the game, was clearly under pressure. Arguably more so than Purdy at times. Statistically, he did get sacked more, of course. And I think that is a huge testament to the Niners under defensive coordinator Robert Saleh realigning and reorganizing with the pieces that they still have, the personnel they still have, and getting it together. And of course, the standout of today's game, the MVP. Last week it was Jair Brown on the defense. This week's MVP was Clelin Ferrell on the defensive line. Now, Clelin Ferrell, of course, for Niners fans who may remember him, had a previous stint in San Francisco before. And now he's back. He was signed midseason to the practice squad, elevated, and he's been getting significant reps on this defensive line. Last week, he recorded the only sack that the Niners had on Bryce Young. And this week, this Sunday, he recorded 2. So he's clearly been one of the bright spots on this defense, for especially a defensive line that's dealt with so many injuries. Nick Bosa is out for the season. Mykel Williams is out for the season. Keon White as well, the another midseason acquisition is played well today too. I think that it shows that the Niners still have a really good eye for talent, and despite depth issues with all of the injuries, they are still able to kind of just chug along and keep doing what they need to do. And so this was a huge win, of course. I know, again, on paper, it may not be that big aside from the fact that it was a double-digit victory, but it's another winning streak. And here is the main division here. This is what's telling about this game. Of course, the Niners had more first downs than the Browns, but look at the third down efficiency. The Niners went 11 of 17 on third down. That is amazing. That exceeds so many expectations, not just in general, but for this team as well. That is, you go 11 of 17 on third down, you're going to win a lot of football games, and a lot of them are going to end up with results like this. And Cleveland, as comparison, only went 3 for 11. They went 0 for 4 on fourth down as well, including a lost fumble in their own side of the field, which was huge. Again, as another telling indicator of how this game went. Field position was huge. Special teams also was a big division in terms of how well the Niners played versus how poorly the Browns played. Multiple turnovers there. Sky Moore, another great punt return in this game to start the game off. So the Niners won doing what some would consider to be the little things, but there are no little things for the NFL, and especially winning teams in the NFL. And just to prove it, look, the Browns outgained the Niners in total yards, and yet it didn't matter. You wouldn't have thought that if you looked at just the final score. So looking ahead to what this could mean for the rest of the regular season. Well, the Niners finally get their bye week, which is crazy to think about. Some of us never thought it would come. Maybe some people forgot that we were supposed to have a bye week, but the bye week is coming. And so the Niners will not play next week, and then they finish the season. Let's take a look at how their schedule ends. They end the season hosting Tennessee, who is one of the worst teams in the NFL. But again, any given Sunday, you got to take it seriously. Then they head to Indianapolis for a Monday night matchup with the Colts, who have just dropped 2 in a row. And there's questions around, are they going to be able to keep it going heading into the back stretch of the season? And then you end the season with 2 very important NFC matchups. The Bears and the Seahawks. The Bears actually, at the time of this recording, have jumped to the number 1 seed in the NFC after the Rams lost to the Panthers. And then, of course, Seattle, you want to try and sweep the season series with them. That could end up being huge for playoff seeding. So time will tell on how important if that becomes any more important than it already is for a division matchup. But my final thoughts are this. The Niners are stacking important plays, important moments, and especially wins. This could not be coming at a better time, especially heading into the bye week. I know there are some concerns about cooling off, but the Niners are clearly in a groove, and they're waiting for some players to come back. Tatum Bethune, their Mike linebacker, chief among them. Still waiting to find out when he will come back, but the bye week is going to help. And now with the Rams loss, and we're waiting to see what happens with Seattle versus Minnesota on Sunday as well. But with the Rams loss especially, the Niners still have a hand in competing for the NFC West, which could prove to be huge for seeding, of course, but they are clearly in the mix in general for not just a wild card spot in the playoffs, but even a division title, which just a few weeks ago after the Niners got blown out by the Rams at home, that seemed to be out of the question. And yet, here the Niners are, 3 wins in a row later, and very much alive for both a division title and a playoff spot. So stay tuned. We're going to keep you updated on how the Niners are performing, as well as any major bye week updates with injuries, roster moves. Some are bound to happen considering how many midseason acquisitions the Niners have had to make. So more may be on the way. But thank you so much for watching this episode of Niners Digest. My name is Ethan Galbraith, and we will see you in the next video.